Test. Oh! And we are back! Welcome back, everybody. So, now we're going to have a special, actually like a first thing ever for DIE itself and for Howest. We're going to have our very first Game for Thought as like a live event where you can ask the panel that we've gathered today the actual questions live from the public, and they will answer all of your questions. Now, what is Game for Thought? Well, Game for Thought started us last year as a small project from Howest itself, where we had like monthly streams and monthly podcasts tackling some very ethical subjects. Now, I would give like a longer presentation about this or a longer introduction, but I'm just going to hand over my microphone to my colleague Ali Wies, who is going to take over the wheel and going to lead this panel into glory.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone, and welcome. A very warm welcome to our very first live in-person Game for Thought stream. Last year, we actually started this initiative last year during Corona. It was all streamed live through Twitch, which was equally as cool, but we're definitely really excited to be able to do this in person with a real life panel. My name is Ali Wies. I am actually not from Belgium. If you can tell, I'm originally from the US. I am our ethics coordinator in international game development at Howest Hogeschool Campus for Digital Arts and Entertainment. Also super important to mention, this panel is live in person. It's also being streamed via Twitch. So hello to everyone out there on Twitch watching right now. Thank you. We really appreciate you joining us for the launch of Season 2 of Game for Thought. Basically, just to give you a rundown of what the Game for Thought series is. So it's a project that we started last year to basically open up a space for ethically relevant, socially relevant topics in the game industry. A lot of you are DIE students, some of you not, but we just want to make sure that in an industry, in an education so technical, that we don't lose sight of these ethically relevant topics, because they will be really important for you all as you enter the industry. And of course, for those of you who have already been in the industry for quite some time. We're going to dive into the questions that were pre-submitted to our lovely panelists, who will introduce themselves in just a little bit, just to be clear that we will also have an audience Q&A at the end of the panel discussion for both our lovely in-person audience and our viewers out on Twitch. For those of you joining us via Twitch, I'll look at the camera for that. For those of you joining us on Twitch, if you could just wait, hold on to your questions, write them down, keep them in your head until around 3:20. I'll clearly introduce it then, and I have my handy dandy iPad with me right here. I'll take a look through the questions and I'll pick some for us to discuss on our panel. So again, our very first Game for Thought stream about women in games and workplace culture. We are live from UNWRAP Festival, which is Belgium's first digital entertainment festival. They aim to build bridges across different entertainment industry domains. So without further ado, who's ready to launch Season 2 of Game for Thought? Yeah, all right. I like that enthusiasm. Alrighty, so I have 5 lovely panelists here joining me. It's a lot more interesting, I think, if they introduce themselves. So we have Dagmar, Yasmin, Lisa, Jill, and Jadija. So let's go without further ado. Dagmar, would you like to introduce yourself? All right.
Hello? Yeah. Okay, now it is. Okay, so I'm Dagmar. I'm co-founder of Like Charlie. We make narrative-driven games. I'm also the writer and narrative designer, and I am a woman.
Was that me? Hi, I'm Yasmin. I'm writer and co-founder of a little studio called Poppins and Wayne. We make games and other experiences where story and technology meet. And a woman. Yeah.
Hello everyone, my name is Lisa Bowens. I'm a senior pipeline artist working at Frontier Developments based in Cambridge in the UK. I also happen to be a woman. And yeah, I'm looking forward to doing this panel.
Hi, I'm Jill. I'm a UX and a game designer, freelance at the moment, and I'm also teaching here game design and communication. And I'm mostly I'm mostly doing applied and serious gaming.
Hi, I'm Yaditya. I'm a writer and narrative designer. I work freelance contract everywhere and anywhere in Europe. Originally from Amsterdam, and I have a background as well in theater and film.
Alrighty, awesome. So as you can see, we have a lovely panelist of women who have had significant experience in the industry, also film industry, some of you theater as well. So very excited to get started. Let's dive right in to a question that I think is fundamental to this discussion. So whoever of you would like to answer this one first, go right ahead. This question reads, as a female lead in the industry, how have you experienced or not experienced stereotype, threat, and bias? Do you feel increased self-pressure as a female in the industry? So I'll pass this on to whoever of you who'd like to tackle this one first.
I'll break the ice, that's fine. So I think it definitely is a thing, and even if it doesn't come from your environment, I think definitely a large part of it can come from within. Obviously, since women are so underrepresented in the games industry, you do feel like you have to be more, be better, prove your right to be there. And even if no one around you is saying that, subconsciously I feel there's a lot of pressure for a woman to show up, to know enough, to be valid, like deemed to be there. Whereas actually we have the same amount of knowledge and skills, and it shouldn't matter. But that doesn't mean you don't kind of put that onto yourself. I think, especially for me personally, I've definitely felt that. So I don't know how that resonates with the rest of the panel.
I completely agree with you, because I've experienced also a few times of positive discrimination where I'm put in a team because I am a woman and they are then happy that they are diverse. But that only also puts a burden on you that you have to do extra your best because you know you're that one step behind. Yeah. And yeah, I've experienced that as well.
Yeah. Or you get hired for not just because you're then the woman and they need one, but specifically, like I've been hired to do rewrites on games for women or with a female lead, and those games started out as being designed and written by men, and then halfway through the process it's like, oh, wait, this doesn't resonate with women. Maybe we should ask a woman to look at it.
Wait, women exist.
Exactly, they exist. So then you sort of not just are the token woman, but you're also expected to only comment on female things. So that's sort of what version of what you were mentioning, like that sort of the positive, negative discrimination balance is sort of off.
So you feel like in some instances you are asked to function, or feel like you have to function as a mouthpiece for an entire
exactly,
group
because then it's like, okay, we've hired one woman, she knows everything about all women everywhere in the world. So if she says it's okay, all the women who will play our game will love it. Yeah. And
it's your responsibility.
I'm happy that people are laughing here, because not everybody understands that this is an issue. So thank you for understanding this.
And I also think once you've been tokenized as a woman, or you know that there is this tendency to do it where they're like, well, just hire one female and then we're done. Yep. When you get hired for legitimate reasons, imposter syndrome can start being, was I the diversity hire? Did they hire me just because they needed to fill a quota? Whereas, no, you're not. You're hired because of your skills. But it is something that can be very insidious deep down, where you're like, oh, maybe I didn't do good enough and I'm just that. Whereas, you're not. You're doing great.
Yasmin, Dagmar, anything to add?
I think for me, even being here today and being part of this group of women in games, this is, for me, the first time in my career that I've been confronted with the fact that, my gender is of any relevance at all in what I do, which is strange. I think it comes with some pressure, some responsibility. For me, on a very personal level, I'm not a great fan of being in front of audiences, but I feel it's necessary, apparently.
Yeah, I kind of want to. I understand what Jasmine is saying, because me personally, also within the games industry, I've never ever encountered any problems. I mean, I've been in the industry for 3 years now in Belgium, and I got to say, my Belgian colleagues, they're all of them amazing. I've never been discriminated because I'm a woman. On the contrary, maybe even. But I feel part of it, so I don't feel discriminated. But then again, like, my experience is I worked for a company, and then I started my own company. And I was talking to this friend of mine who is a screenwriter, who worked on a television show, and sexism is very, very relevant there in that room. And I was like, how come that I never encountered that? And she's like, yeah, but you got your own company. I mean, you're doing what you want to do. You're in that seat where you don't need to ask permission to the white man to be part of that table. You're doing it yourself. Right. And I think that's why I have never encountered it.
I'm really glad, Dagmar, that you brought that into the discussion. One of my follow-up questions from that previous question was, do you think your line of work or experience, specifically whether you've freelanced or been company-bound, for those of you who have had those experiences, does it change face depending on if you are working alone, if you are a freelance artist, or if you are company-bound? Yeah. Or is it a problem no matter where?
No, I think there is a big difference, and I totally recognize what Dagmar is saying. Also, I think another aspect is like being autonomous, whether in having your own company, working as a freelancer, or even coming into the industry a bit later with experience, because I found that was a different. I came into the industry later as well, and true. You see discrimination against like the young women coming in. More than to people like me. And I think that the biggest issues, at least in my experience, start when you are becoming part of a company. So there is a company, you get hired, and you need to be a part of that, because that's when the hierarchy starts, and the power, and the like, this is your boss, and this is the person who tells you what to do, and even if you have a more lead situation. So for me, I've seen that being more of a solo freelancer and coming in and doing my thing will give you leverage. People will be like, okay, yeah, she's hired to do this, so she probably can do it. Whereas you are hired to be part of the company, you need to work harder to earn your place, which makes no sense, but that's how it is.
Any other thoughts regarding?
I think I've only ever worked at one company, so I think I have a bit less of a perspective on how it could be different aside from my internship. But I think it can be very different, especially when I read conversations from other women on Twitter and stuff, for instance. I've definitely seen a lot of people say, this is why I'm no longer at the company. Because you're in the middle of it, in the thick of it all the time. You can't, like you said, you can't set your own rules. You're not being hired to do a specific job. You're just there to work as part of the company. And it does give you a lot less leverage. And that's why a lot of, I'm always curious to know how many women get hired into a company and then stay in the industry or in a company, and what size is the company. Because I worry about the women who drop out because they're like, I'm not going to deal with this. I shouldn't have to, and I'm not going to. Yeah.
Kind of coming off of that statement, Lisa, do you think that, and for all panelists, do you think that there might be a difference regarding gender equality and the awareness of these issues when you look at educational institutions versus the industry? What does the gender divide look like there, and what does the equity look like there as well?
I think there's definitely a big difference, because education is the first step. Hiring is the second. And it doesn't matter how many women study games development if they then don't get hired. So I took notes.
So we see that, Lisa, doing a great job.
So I work in the UK. So there's a organization in the UK called UKI. They do a yearly census of the games industry and kind of what the makeup of it is. And 70% of the industry is male, and then 28% female, and then 2% non-binary or other. So there's already very little. And then if you look at how that progresses over time, you lose women at a certain point. Partly because probably they haven't joined at the same time as men. We started later. We weren't encouraged to do this. But also there seems to be kind of a drop-off, which also happens in STEM and stuff like that, where there comes a certain point where women either decide they've had enough, or the environment is hostile to them, or they don't want to continue doing it anymore. So I think even if we have I'd love to know what the ratio is in DIA at the moment. But I think even if we have a higher ratio there, that can sometimes not always translate to the industry percentages.
Yeah, and I also think that it's when you hire those people, it's not only that apparently we are all lucky. We don't have like this big problems or didn't have them, but it's not because you didn't have a big problem that it's okay. It's that lack of belonging sometimes. That if you are the only woman in a work culture that is like a lot of guys you see here in talks, everybody's so proud that they worked so hard and they worked so much hours and they finished that game. But that's also when I came in the industry. This was later. I had a child, so it was different. So my company was different also. And I think that sometimes it's that belonging that is lost to make us, like Samuel said before, to make us happy in the job we are doing. And that starts with companies, the higher tiers, asking the right questions, like, are we thinking about simple things like hygienic products in the toilets, or more other things like, is there a safe place to talk about these things?
Right. So it's, I think, a game-related issue, but also something that any workplace really can focus on and make adjustments to. I really want to get to another pre-submitted question from one of our students. So why is this topic, of course it's a question, why this topic is important anyway, in any regard, in any domain, any education? Why games? Why is this so, or why not? Why is this topic important in the game industry? Why is it important for example, our students to be thinking about gender diversity and inclusion in games and in the industry? Why start here with this panel discussion?
Yeah, it makes sense because half the population of the world is women. Simple answer, but over half of the people who play games are women. And not every game is narrative driven, but let's say 80% has a narrative or a person-shaped main character. They represent everybody. So let's make sure that we're all there in the games, in the stories, because we want to play them. So if we want to play them, we want to make them as well, and we want to see ourselves.
Yeah, it's purely economic. You will sell more games if you include the women, and you will make a more female-appealing game if you have a diverse team.
I think also from like a society standpoint, I think we need to have discussions like this as long as I get asked during career fairs whether it's safe to work at my company as a woman. If that's still a question that people get asked, then the conversation isn't over, I think.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But I think it's funny to realize that indeed you've experienced the coming into a company and being hired into a company, while the four of us, we had previous careers in other industries, and we were independent professionals coming into the industry, so we skipped the ladder.
entry bit.
Yeah. And so I think we also sort of missed out on these issues that you are being confronted with. I think as female independent professionals and CEOs, we probably have a big role to play there, and to make sure that these new young professionals don't encounter those issues. I think there's definitely a role to pick up by us there. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I think
Technology,
Start
right?
over, no.
it's also important to see yourself. And this is true with any minority as well. If you never see anyone who looks like you doing the thing that you want to do, you can start thinking, can I do this? Will this, have a negative effect on me? And as long as we don't have more visible women in games and every industry that has, less women in it, then we don't let people who want to get into it have that kind of sense of, yes, I can do this. I do belong here. I can go here.
Yeah, I want to say something about that too. Like, I think it's very important that there's the people who make it, the developers, but also the games that we make, that you see yourself represented on the screen. So you feel like, oh yeah, that world is for me. It's not just for those dudes. It's also for me. I can do that. And it starts, I don't know where it starts. It starts everywhere at the same time. It starts with you guys, graduating, coming into the industry. But also starts with us who already have a company, making stories that are diverse. And it's not just about women. It's about color, about education, about social background. We need to make sure that all those stories find a place on the screen. And for me, that is very important. And why games? Because that was your initial question.
Right.
Why games? Is that games are the only medium that will let you all know this, will let you experience something. It's not somebody on the screen. You're a player. You're actually playing a woman. And that's also why I think it's important that we craft stories that are specific to women or any other BIPOC, whatever, because then you experience that story. And it's not just choosing a black NPC or a woman NPC. It's more diverse than that. And that's why games.
So I think, am I right in saying that a lot of times these issues are really narrowed down upon in film and TV, and games maybe not so much? But Dagmar, based on what you're saying, the interactive nature of it and the fact that you're actively engaging in this, that's why it's so important to see yourself, be able to act as yourself, even in a world that technically isn't real, but it really does still have an impact.
Or being able to act like somebody you are not, and then empathizing with them. Right. Because that's point. One of the awesome things about gaming, that when you have a game with a story, people buy it usually for the gameplay, not for the story. Even if they think, oh, I hate this story, but I like this type of game, I'm gonna buy it. And then whether they want it or not, they're gonna be in the shoes of a main character of NPC for like 20, 30 hours or 200 hours even. So gaming, more than film and TV and theater, has the opportunity to let people be and get to know other people that they are not themselves.
Quite literally, you put them in somebody else's shoes.
Yeah.
There's no other medium that does that.
It's very powerful in terms of creating empathy.
Right. Right. So going back, just for time's sake, I see that we have 5 more minutes until our audience Q&A. We could stand up here, I think, and talk about this for a very long time. But just for time's sake, I'm going to combine 2 more questions that were also asked by our students. Does your studio or workplace, or if you are freelance, work independently, how do you offer, if you do, how do you offer diversity and inclusion initiatives pertaining to gender? Where do we start, and how can we ensure safe working conditions for women?
I'll hop in. So I believe we do not actually offer any at Frontier at the moment. So anything that we do is informal between women, which is something that I think should change. I think a lot of the bigger companies in the UK and a lot of the smaller ones as well are definitely doing more and more. And I think it's important that everyone kind of joins that movement, because it's necessary. We're doing a panel about it. Obviously, it's a current thing, and we really should be investing in this right now.
And what I also think is that it's not only for us women to change that. There's the other half of the population that needs to help as well. And it starts with everybody asking the same questions. And it also starts with in a company, putting aside time to do that, because it's hard work to make a diverse, to make an inclusive work culture. And you need to give a person time in his or her schedule to do that and to really allocate it.
Yeah, and to show the benefits of diversity in your workplace, and not single it out too much. Because on the one hand, it's great when you get into a new company that you will get to know other women. Like I've worked in companies where they had like buddy systems. So you got like another female buddy who was probably not on your own team, but at least you got to know other women. I know there's big companies who have like special groups for women or minorities in their company. And that's great because you need to have that support system. But on the other hand, if that's the only thing you do, then you're again singling out those people. So It's like, oh yeah, we have women in our company thingy, and they can have tea together, and so we're doing well. No, you need to have everybody combine their efforts and their gender and their background in whatever, and make it diverse.
Can I say something quickly about?
Of course, Dagmar. Go right ahead.
We're making our next game is Cherry, and we have a male black character, and not because it's a story about a black man necessarily. It's a universal story, but the question rose like, why is this character white? Why? Why is he not black? We couldn't come up with a reason, so he became a black character. And I think that is also part of what you can do as a studio. You craft these stories that are more diverse, and then you get the people to tell them. I'm a writer. I'm writing Ghost on the Shore, but I will not write Cherry. We're working with 2 black writers from Canada who are going to write Cherry, because I cannot write in the same way that they can. And I think that's also a first, maybe not a first step, but it's a big step to get to make our team also more diverse. Because if you tell diverse stories, you need a diverse team. Just like Jadida said before, like how can you make a game for women if there's no woman on the team?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, Dagmar, can I challenge you?
Yeah.
Would you write, or did you write, male characters?
I am. He's a ghost, but he used to be a man.
He's a ghost. It's an interesting question. Even if there's not an answer right now, thinking about writing characters and writing stories for, and being a mouthpiece for an individual that you haven't experienced there. Maybe, I think maybe for that, the concept of power and privilege might be interesting to think about, and maybe the difference lies there in terms of, acting as a mouthpiece and telling someone's story when maybe you don't have the right or the responsibility to do so. But it's an interesting question. One more, and then we're going to head to audience Q&A. Speaking on the topic of safe workplaces. This one was also submitted by Christophe de Bont, who's actually a freelance journalist for the Standaard. He asks, and this is a tough one, but I think it's super interesting for us to cover. The most prolific stories of sexual harassment or worse of female game developers are taking place in North American studios. Why do you think that is? Does it happen over here as well? And over here meaning Europe, maybe on a smaller scale?
I haven't been in the US, so I'm not sure. I think in my very uneducated opinion, I think a lot of it is probably due to power imbalance, because it always comes back to that. Yeah. And I think in the US, with having less worker rights, if you're desperate to hang on to a job, you let more shit happen to you. It just happens that way. And that's whether that's because you're a woman or because you're of an ethnic minority or whatever. In America, I feel like that imbalance is even more so. And I think it will be happening here. It just might be not as bad as there, but that doesn't mean it's not bad. And also, I think with this kind of thing, that power imbalance is really what needs to change. The fact that people can commit those crimes and then get hired in a different company on an equivalent or higher level is sick. I mean, yeah, that we should not be allowing that to happen as an industry. And I think that's an industry-wide responsibility. But that requires people to speak out. And that's something that's still not easy to this day. It's become easier, but it's still not easy.
I think there's something additional to what you're saying, the power imbalance, the worker rights. The bigger the company, the more hierarchy. And I think one of the things that I at least encounter, especially with students or younger people wanting to get into the game industry, is that they have this idea that AAA studios are the best place to work. It's not necessarily so. It can be. But there are so many people who are like, okay, I want to work at Ubisoft, I want to work at EA, I want to, also because that's what your friends ask you. I mean, when I tell people I work in games, they also ask like, oh, do you like work at Ubisoft or whatever? Because that's what they know. And then you're young, you're eager to work there, you do the crunching, and you don't want to be the person who says like, oh yeah, I was 23 and I got my dream job at Ubisoft, and then I stepped out because they were horrible to me. I mean, that's sort of the line. So I think that we also need to be more realistic about how those big companies work, and that being like the 20th person in line at one of those big AAA companies isn't necessarily the best career opportunity. It can be, but when you're at a smaller studio, you often have more responsibilities anyway. So keep that broad mind, and I think that will also help situations like this.
With that, we will head into the audience Q&A. For those of you on Twitch, now is the time to submit your questions. So just put a capital Q in the chat behind your question, and I will choose as many as we can. We have a few more minutes, but go ahead and submit your questions in the chat. Anyone here in the audience would like to ask a question? Lovely. I see quite a few. We'll start in the front.
Hello. I've heard a lot of positive things about working here in Belgium, women working here in Belgium, but I don't necessarily want to work in Belgium, but I don't know how the workplace environment is in different countries for women specifically. Have you ever experienced any discrimination towards women? How did you learn to handle that? How did you learn to step up for yourself so you won't get stepped on? Yeah, that is my question.
Worked outside, is it just... Oh yeah, us too. Okay. So I've personally, and I hate saying that I've been lucky, because that's a gross thing to say, but I've never really encountered any discrimination in the workplace. I work in the UK. I think when it comes to making sure you can speak out and stuff, remember that you were hired for a reason. Don't go down the I was just a diverse. No, you weren't. You have skills. They have to listen to you, and if they don't, that is a situation that you can take yourself out of. I think it's very fair for women to decide whether this is something they want to do. There's a lot of, how do you say that? Self-inflicted pressure, but you can remove yourself from a situation where you are not being taken care of. You deserve that as an employee and as a woman. It's a hard decision to make, but you should always keep in the back of mind that you can do that. You have that power.
So for you, it's not necessarily, Lisa, tied to geographic location, but more so an internal story there caused by external elements that really could be anywhere.
Yeah, I think culture, depending on country, can definitely be very different, but because I haven't experienced anything, I don't want to give a set answer on it, because I'm like, well, I feel like I don't know what I'm talking about in that respect, I guess.
Yeah. I can just add one small thing. I've worked in a lot of different countries, and the best thing to do is just take some time to realize what's different about that country, and that's not just about the gaming workplace, because I've experienced that basically the gaming industry specifically is the same everywhere, but it's like the local things that are like the normal way that people handle each other, like how much hierarchy is there, how friendly are people, how open-minded, things like that. That makes the difference, but that's outside of gaming. It's just cultural.
All right, I think I can take one more question. I see right here, I'm so sorry. Just to highlight, even before we get to the end, I know that this is a topic, again, we could talk about for a very long time. All of our lovely panelists will be around all day, so please do not hesitate to come up to any of them. They'd be happy to have a chat with you. Don't be afraid, just go ahead and ask. Yes.
Hello. So I just wanted to ask, like, I have never had a lot of information regarding women working in the industry before I came to DIA, but I always think, as a man, as a future developer in the gaming industry, like, what can I do personally as a person to, let's say, make a difference, or like notice there's something going on, or how can I actually know or try to help out any of the colleagues, for